Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Berman, the host of the Cyber Hero Adventure Show. Thanks so much for joining us today. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm kind of the Forrest Gump of cybersecurity because I just kind of bump into the most extraordinary people in the entire world on a subject matter that affects everything, cybersecurity. That's for sure. And one of the people that I had the privilege of bumping into early in this journey is Tom Brennan. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Hey, Gary, how are you?
Great. So nice to see you again. And I originally met Tom was at the very first of 53 cybersecurity conferences that I've been at in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, come on. And I heard all these speakers, and then Tom came up, and he was just head and shoulders kind of above the rest. And I said, okay, I'm going to glob on that guy to see what I can learn about it. Now here we are almost 4 years later. You stuck around. What are you, a glutton for punishment?
I've been married before, Gary. I guess I am.
Okay, hold it. Time out. I do the humor. You do the substance. That way
There
we
you go.
kind of stay in our lanes. On a more profound note, Tom, I really, on behalf of my family and I and everybody in the digital universe, thanks for being a real life unsung cyber hero.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome. So, you know a little bit about my origin story, but let's share with our audience your origin story. How did you come to this moment?
Sure. So I've been involved in technology since the 80s. For those that have been around the block for a bit, I ran a bulletin board service and communicated with people worldwide. And back in the day, that was something that we did. Building computers, writing programs, and then working with uh, organizations. Eventually, then I went into the military, and then came out and then worked in the financial services sector. Been involved in a couple different organizations and community projects, and really brings me here is to talk about Crest and Crest International.
And before we jump into that, by the way, I really, really, really want to thank Crest International for being the sponsor of this show. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, yeah. We love what you're doing, Gary. It's always good to help raise visibility for information security, and then we definitely support the effort.
Well, wait a minute. We have some breaking news here. Cybersecurity Ventures researchers forecast that there will be an excessive shortage of talent. That is, I think, cybersecurity professionals to meet the demand. This is like an amazing coincidence that we have you on the show.
Well, I think that's a headline that people talk about all the time. However, I think there's an interesting dynamic there. A lot of the universities are doing a very good job on trying to align their syllabuses to what industry needs, so that individuals going through higher education can go ahead and come out and be operational. That's the gap, right? The gap is people that need jobs that are technical. They have to have a little bit of a background to plug into these organizations appropriately.
And how would you dimensionalize the gap? I've heard different statistics about unfilled positions. What is your perspective on that?
Um, as a CIO for a law firm here with the staff, I look at it as that there's a very wide array of roles to fill, and I don't know that the business always understands that. I think that when you look at the different hats that people wear, you go to the far left where you could have a tier one support break fix type person helping organizations and helping the people be better, to the middle, which is programmers, developers focused on building new innovative technologies, and then to the right being more on the blue team or looking to protect and defend the organization. So there's lots of different roles. If you use a rough number, I would say 20 different roles are easily to be identified by title, and then organizations may look at that and say, oh well, we're going to hire a guy and he'll do 20 roles, and unfortunately that's not realistic. You can't be very deep when you have to go 20 wide.
That's a really good insight. And one of the many things that I've learned from listening and learning to so many thought leaders is, I guess, this question: when do you sleep?
I think we have to scale. We have to scale with technology, do what's important when it's important, and of course, if there's incidents and issues that pop up, then it could be a very late night and caffeine infused.
Indeed. And so speaking of incidents and issues, you mentioned Crest a little bit earlier. Let's dive into that here. And we have a very interesting graph. Tell us what we're looking at.
Sure. So this is one of those logos that sort of describes the Crest organization. Sort of to give you the top level and drill into it a little bit, I think it's important to understand that Crest is an international not-for-profit accreditation and certification body that represents and supports the technical information security markets. That's a mouthful, but basically since about 2004, Crest has been there to help establish the go-to organizations that are servicing critical national infrastructure. As that organization has grown up in the community, it has worked with many organizations that are global, that have spanned now between the UK, Singapore, Australia, United States, etc. And as we continue to roll the organization as it gets bigger, we're about 56 people now across the world, and we represent about 245 companies today. Those organizations range from very large organizations with 50, 60,000 employees to organizations that are smaller, that have a very focused effort around incident response, security operations centers, and security operations centers and penetration testing. So 3 particular pillars of organizations that focus in that area. And then there's also a training component, organizations that do training. But again, Crest is a place that a buyer can go to and can look for a short list of organizations that have been accredited and measured and that reduce the risk to the buyer, so that they have gone ahead and have a short list of organizations to work with.
And to give kind of de-risks, the decision of who to work with, correct?
At least it minimizes it, makes it a little bit smaller. It's one thing to say, hey, I need a penetration test. It's something different to say, I have a nuclear power plant or a transportation system or an airline that I want to go ahead and test, but I want to ensure not only do the people have the skill set required, but I also want to ensure the organization has the ability to handle those projects and also care for the custody of the data. It's important. It's more than just an individual, because I always say ethics is what it's all about, right? There's a good guy, there's a bad guy. The only difference is ethics. So we can find highly qualified members or qualified individuals, but you also need to look at the entire workflow of the organization as well.
Indeed. And you have quite a background in penetration testing.
Formerly, I did a lot of offensive work. And I continue to stay true to my roots and have some fun as it pertains to bounty programs and things of that nature. But nowadays, I really focus with Mandelbaum Salzburg as their chief information officer. So I have a wider scope these days than offensive penetration testing. But it does continually come up in threat models and conversations about how to be defensible and how to be commercially reasonably secure.
And is it difficult to communicate the importance of cybersecurity to, let's say, a small to medium business like law firms? I mean, the impression that I have is, in many respects, they're kind of like sitting ducks.
I think the importance of security is more prevalent to everybody these days. You just look at the news and see protests and drama and issues and security related issues. You hear about breaches every day in the news. We see organizations that have had large confidentiality breaches over a number of years. We can pepper and name drop big Fortune 100 companies that have had problems, but at the end of the day, people do have a care for the data, and I have a personal interest in organizations that protect life. If we're talking about mass production of control systems or power grids or regulatory areas, these are important areas that we would not want to go sideways and cause mass destruction and harm.
Indeed, and we've had some of those examples. Unfortunately, recently, certainly with the electric grid, like in Ukraine and things like that. I mean, when it comes to critical infrastructure, what's your assessment on how the U.S. is doing versus the threats?
So my opinion is that the organization, from the prior administration as well as the current administration, has a very has a focus on critical infrastructure. I had the pleasure of working under Howard Schmidt when I was with Safecode. Howard, as you may recall, was the cyber czar appointed by George W. Bush. I worked under multiple presidents and administrations, but working with Howard was enlightening because it was always about trying to ensure it was one fight, one mission. So when you surround yourselves by individuals and organizations and people that understand what it is to focus on a mission, that really helps because everyone sort of takes their piece and understands sort of what their position is in the game, like a football squad or a basketball team. But everybody's important in ensuring the supply chain, and then working together for a common outcome is very important.
It's very well said. And speaking of important missions and supply chain, you and I were kind enough to invite me to a conference about CMMC. Of course, our audience is well aware that that's the Department of Defense initiative to ensure some certification of various levels of cybersecurity maturity to help avoid attacks. Can you share with our audience a little bit about CMMC?
Sure, absolutely. So in order to go backwards, in order to go forwards, I think we should go backwards a little bit. A lot of folks are familiar with the NIST 800 series of guidance, and in particularly 800-171 is for organizations that handle CUI, and then of course we have 853, again affecting different types of organizations, different types of agencies. But if we look at those two particular items, most organizations that do supply chain or provide services to, let's say, the Department of Defense, they attest that they are 800-171 compliant. There's typically a requirement from procurement that says, you're providing us with widgets. Again, widgets could be airplane parts, it could be
right.
bullets, it could be computers, it could be whatever it is.
Do you mean self-attest? Like is that what you mean?
The organizations
yeah.
organizations have to acknowledge and
okay.
and sign off on that they have met and exceeded the 800-171 requirements.
I see.
And this is a self-assessment, right? It's meaning they go through and say, yes, I do this, yes, I do that, yes, I do that. Now, if organizations or individuals don't really understand what they're signing off on, or misinterpret the question, or really don't prove that there's any evidence that they actually do the thing they say they do, then what have they really done? They've misrepresented. They've gotten the contract. They may provide services, but they've kind of misrepresented themselves. So one of the things that we understood was in the supply chain problem. Well, how do we accredit that? How do we look at the organizations and ensure that they have met those requirements? And the only way to do that, honestly, is to have a third party, an unbiased third party, conduct an assessment to confirm. So CMMC was sort of built and born in that fashion, where that there are 5 different levels. Organizations that do business with the Department of Defense, and now multiple agencies and other organizations as well, have started to adopt this mindset to say it's not good enough to say that yes, you read the book and yes, you think you're compliant. Well, now it's important that if you're in the supply chain, we need to go ahead and have it reviewed by a third party. And really what that does is it ensures that organizations that said they were compliant are compliant. And there's a process there that really helps individuals on board, because it's kind of an open book test. The CMMC material is open, it's publicly available, and it's sort of review again and understand what you're being mapped to. And if you need assistance or guidance there's plenty of companies out there that do that sort of work. But at the end of the day, we're trying to help the organizations with their supply chain, because we wouldn't want to provide, aircraft parts, as an example, that have had an infiltration and a design problem. My story is a little disconnected, but imagine, if you will, that a third-party supplier was to be given a task, a project by a prime, and the subcontractor that did the work, might employ 50, 60, 100 people, whatever it may be. But, the design documents that they have to build to spec were infiltrated, were modified, were changed. Then the supplier makes the parts in good faith, does what they have to do, and they're actually providing, parts or items back to the organization that would not, hold up or won't pass muster. So take that example and apply it to technology, software, airplane parts, whatever it may be. But if you're buying things on assurance levels that are going to protect human life, I think you'd agree that you'd want to have the highest quality that you can. So the last thing you need is somebody misrepresenting or not passing muster on some of the basics of security controls as it pertains to the data, information, or designs that are there. So we can look to the far left at the F-35, program. Or we can look to the far right of this new thing that's going to be built. But the suppliers providing these services, simply just need to do what's considered best practice, and I would convert that to be commercially reasonable. Because if you can't be commercially reasonable, then how can you be defendable?
Yeah, oh, wow, that's a really good insight. So, with that in mind, I'm going to have our team pop up this very interesting graphic from Crest about some of the processes. So, what are we looking at here?
Oh yeah, a good summary there. So again, we're looking at this is the CMMC documentation piece that sort of aligns it back to. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the CREST documentation that aligns it back to sort of the different levels. So when individuals are going to enroll in different programs within CREST, they can be measured. They can be measured that they're able to be competent. So if you're a practitioner, if you're registered, and/or if you're certified, these three different levels sort of help organizations understand what they're acquiring or what they're buying from the organizations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And it's kind of like a good housekeeping seal of approval in some respects. Is that fair, or is that too simplistic?
Again, I would keep it simple. I would keep it simple that it's a very exhaustive marketplace. Technology is not easy for everyone to comprehend and digest. So the buyer is the most important in the conversation. They're looking for a vetted product or service that they can use in their environment. So having anything that they can review, whether it be a top 10 list, whether it can be guidance, whether it be a pre-vetted list of providers based on some level of accreditation, I think those are very important things. Just as if we needed to go, we find out from our general practitioner who's a registered and accredited doctor that we might have a lump or a problem or something, he refers you to a specialist. Well, you'd want to have a list of specialists that have sort of passed muster, and then you want to meet with those specialists to have that that deep brain review, or God forbid some other significant problem. But take the physical side, keep it simple, and just understand that there's processes here to help the businesses in assuring what they want. If not, it is truly the Wild West, and we need to help organizations understand sort of what good looks like.
Yeah, speaking of what good looks like, I want to have join our show here, a great friend of the show. This is Scott Algier. How you doing, Scott?
Doing great, Gary. Thank you. Thank you very much. I love your segues.
They're just natural. Look, everyone in this audience knows I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm very committed to the mission of doing it. So, thank you for forgiving me in advance. But
no worries. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Scott's awesome. In addition to his consulting practice, same with Tom. He volunteers. Again, I would like to ask the question. When do you sleep?
Yeah, no, it's a fair one. I have a good team. I have a great team around me, and there's certainly a lot to do, but I enjoy what I do. So, and I have a good team around me. So, the hours are long sometimes, but it's a good mission, as Tom was saying.
Yeah, indeed. So, tell us the mission of the ISAC. You're the executive director, and dimensionalize that for our audience. And I would like you to tell them how they become members.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. So, the IT ISAC is the Information Technology Information Sharing and Analysis Center. We provide a forum for the technology companies to share information about the bad guys. Or there's a intelligence management platform that we put indicators into. There's analytic collaboration that we host and sponsor through some of our technical committee and special interest groups. And it's all of our member companies sign a common non-disclosure agreement. So there's a trusted framework for sharing. It rules around the sharing. And we were established in 2000. So we've been doing this for a little while now. And we support 3 critical infrastructure sectors now. We support the IT, the food and agriculture, and the elections technology providers. So those who are interested in learning more, itisac.org, and IT, there's a hyphen in there, ISAC.org.
Wow, that's just terrific. And, one of the interesting things that I've had the opportunity, the privilege of listening and learning from so many folks, in the community is this mission orientation, mission driven. Tom mentioned it several different times. I love understanding why people do what they do. So Tom, let me ask you just a little further. Can you tell us more like on a human level, like why do you do what you do? Or not? We got you. There you go.
So
okay.
I think it's probably about culture. Can you hear me? I think it's kind of a little bit of culture and society, and the way you're brought up. So I come out of a military family. I served in the Marine Corps. So I serve the purpose bigger than myself. When I see something, I like to personally get involved and try to actually affect that change, not just talk about it. So when we see a problem, we might collaborate with others, share some common goals, and then from there deconflict and go fix it. Because the only way that we're going to resolve these things, quite frankly, is for people to get together. The cavalry's not coming. Nobody's going to fix it. We are the old people in the room, as many of my friends like Nick Percoco and Josh Corman would say. But at the end of the day, it comes down to us, right? We're the adults in the room, and we have to take responsibility for future generations. And I think that's really the driver on every project that I work on, which is, who's it really going to affect and how's it going to help?
Yeah. What about you, Scott? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, the mission is awesome, right? You have all sorts of advanced adversaries collaborating to find new ways into networks, and it's someone needs to organize the good guys, right? Someone needs to organize the network defenders. So the ITISAC provides me, and my work with the ITISAC provides a really valuable way to help the community organize. It's worth noting, Tom mentioned the role of Howard Schmidt. Howard was actually the ITISAC first president. He was when the ITISAC was founded in 2000, Howard was with Microsoft, and he was the chief security officer, and he helped to establish the ISAC. So there's also, and I've talked with you about this as well, there's also an obligation to the people who've come before me to help start the mission, help seed it, help grow it. So there's a mission to keep their work going as well.
Indeed. So let's return more now to the notion of accreditation. Tom, can you just explain in simple terms, is there a difference? What is the difference between accreditation and certification?
Sure. So when we look to accredit, we need to go ahead and measure against a particular standard set to ensure that those items have been met and achieved, right? Most of the component items that are there, and that really helps organizations understand that they can meet and exceed those goals, right, with a little bit of confidence. On the certification side, I think many of us associate that with an individual, and that's usually tied to competency. So not only do you have knowledge, but you're also able to apply the knowledge, and having certification allows that to be done. So certification and accreditation, I think, are very subtle differences, but in my world they mean the world, because we want to be able to work with accredited organizations and certified individuals that at least provide a level of assurance that allows them to then operate at a higher level, and then they can apply that to critical infrastructure. Now, would I say that anyone off the street with the appropriate skills could jump into an environment and point out weaknesses? I would say yes. Again, the only difference between the adversary and the the good guy and the bad guy is ethics. I really don't put a difference on technical skill on the black guy, the black hat guy, or the white hat guy. Like, that's not the spot. I look at upon as what's behind the keyboard and what's the ethics. So again, when we look at certification, look at accreditation, those two things go together.
And this is not something I was going to share, but I was very proud. I recently got my very first certification, CERT. at 63 years of age. Take a look at what happened.
DevOps Gary Berman. Did you pass?
I passed. Thank you so much for all your support. So I was actually crying. And the reason I was crying is, I'll ask you, the minimal score to pass was 65 and a perfect score was 100. I'll ask you, Tom, what score do you think I got?
I'm going to go with 66.
And Scott, what score do you think I got?
I already know the answer to that, Gary.
Oh, okay. It was 65.
There you go.
I mean, I passed on the razor's edge. You know,
But again, congratulations on reaching that achievement, right? And then the proficiency is what it's all about.
You know, and
Yeah,
just
sure.
to learn as much as I can from that experience, I asked the certifiers to do me a favor. I just wanted to see what I needed to continue to work on. You know, what did I get wrong? And on all the human stuff within DevOps, like, you know, agile learning and all that stuff, I literally got 100. I got everyone right. And I got like a 30 on all the technical stuff, which is exactly accurate. So,
well, so that's a good example, though, Gary. I think of you know, certification and then accreditation, especially in the technical space. There's, you know, lots of folks that, you know, are good at taking tests, right? They're good at memorizing questions and memorizing answers, and that's good. And that's good for, you know, knowledge. And then there's the other piece about, you know, putting your hands on the keyboard and being able to actually do the things you said you can do in a test. So these two things are very different, and I think competency is important. And I think, like, when Crest holds, you know, examinations, you know, 4-hour examinations about how individuals can go ahead and you know, break into systems during penetration testing, or how they can do incident response. You know, yes, there's questions, but in addition to that, there's also hands-on practicals. So these two things, you know, when they go together, then you have not only the certification of the knowledge base, but then you also have the practical application of the hands-on ability. Those things are very valuable.
Indeed. And as we're starting to wrap up, Scott, what is IT, ISAC's kind of perspective on accreditation and certification? Is it safe to assume, you know, that you encourage that?
Yeah, sure. So, specific to the workforce development and training, there's definitely a workforce shortage. There's not enough skilled workers today. That I think the skills gap will increase in the future. We're doing more technology, and we're not training enough people. We're not producing enough people from high schools, colleges, universities to with the skill sets that's needed for most you know, network defenders these days. And I think there's also an issue where not everybody can afford to go off to college, right? So I think these certifications, where you can demonstrate your technical proficiency in specific skill sets, either on specific product sets or generalized security practices or matters, those are really valuable, and it gives the person applying for a job, you know, another way for the hiring manager to evaluate them, right? Especially you're coming out of school, perhaps you don't have a lot of experience yet, but hey, look, I'm certified in these. You haven't had the chance to go to college for whatever reason, but look, I'm technically proficient, I can do the job. Right. So it's really important. And then I think from a employee retention perspective, providing opportunities for your employees to enhance their skill sets is one way to help retain employees and prevent them from going other places. So within the ITI sector, we've announced last year that we had established partnerships with CompTIA, the EC Council, ISACA, as ways to help provide discounted rates to discounted training to help the employees of our member companies maintain their skill sets, and as a way for our make it more affordable for them to take it, and for our member companies to sponsor the training for their employees.
That sounds like a great initiative. And Tom, as we're wrapping up here, we'll give you the last word. What do you want people to know about Crest and its mission, and how do people get more information about it?
Yeah, sure. So I think Crest is a very important organization to critical infrastructure. I think organizations that play in that space probably already know who Crest is, because we represent some of the most proficient security operations centers, penetration testers, organizations in the world, quite frankly, and being able to be on that list of approved providers and accredited organizations is a very prestigious one. Individuals that have gone through the certification piece and have, got the stamp of honor or the badge of honor, they don't have a problem working with any of these organizations globally because they're in such high demand because of the shortage of talented people. So I think that, what people should know is that, Crest is an interesting organization. If you go to crest-approved.org, you should be able to find it, or just search on Crest Approved. But Crest is an organization that really helps. We also help other organizations. We also provide accreditation services for other nonprofits and other associations and other businesses. So Crest does a lot of verification and does a lot of audit work, and we really help the technical industry, kind of weed out areas of concern. The last thing I wanted to mention, Gary, was our recent press release about the Security Operations Center accreditation. We just noticed that we are now doing security operation accreditation, not only for service providers, but also for organizations that want to go ahead and raise the bar and measure their own internal security operations center versus the industry standards. And that really helps with internal verification as well with regulators.
Is this a scoop?
Yes, I guess so. The press release came out a couple of days ago, but we are certainly seeing a lot of organizations gravitate to that.
All right, well, terrific. And on that upbeat note, on behalf of the entire digital universe and all the real-life unsung heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe at work and home, at school, thanks so much to you, Tom, and you, Scott, for who you are and for what you do, and for just keeping us all safe while online. So to the rest of you out in our audience, thanks again for tuning in. If you would like to be a guest on the show, just send an email to Gary at cyberheroescomics.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.